Imagine a country where only people who passed a certain exam could vote. Sounds unfair? Or could it actually make democracy stronger? Today, we're diving into one of the most controversial questions in politics. Should voting have an educational requirement? Voting is one of the most fundamental rights in a democracy. It's the tool through which citizens influence laws, policies, and the leaders who govern them. But not everyone has the same understanding of civic issues, policy consequences, or political systems. Some argue that linking voting to education could create a more informed electorate and lead to better decision-making. Supporters of education-based voting argue that it could reduce the influence of misinformation and populist slogans. People with higher education are more likely to analyze policies critically and consider long-term impacts before casting their vote. They say that a minimum level of civic understanding could make elections less about emotion and more about knowledge. Historically, some countries implemented literacy or knowledge tests to determine voting eligibility. While these systems were often abused, they demonstrate that knowledge has long been considered a factor in civic participation. However, there are strong arguments against this idea. Access to education is unequal across the world, and even within countries. Rural communities, economically disadvantaged groups, and minorities often face barriers to quality schooling. Making education a requirement to vote risks disenfranchising millions, undermining the principle that every citizen's voice counts. Additionally, governments could abuse such rules, defining sufficient education in ways that favor certain groups or political agendas. Democracy, at its core, values equality. Every person, regardless of schooling, should have a say in how they are governed. Real-world examples complicate the picture even further. In several African countries, for instance, political leaders often gain significant support in rural areas by providing groceries, food parcels, or other short-term aid during election seasons. For many citizens living in poverty, such gestures can seem like genuine help, a sign that the leader cares about their needs. But this can also create a dangerous cycle of dependency and manipulation. Instead of focusing on long-term policies or the bigger picture, some voters may cast their ballots out of gratitude or loyalty, influenced by these handouts and the propaganda that surrounds them. In this way, the lack of access to education and civic awareness can make it easier for politicians to exploit basic needs for political gain, turning elections into contests of charity rather than informed choice. So, should voting have an educational requirement? The truth is, there's no easy answer. Balancing equality, fairness, and informed decision-making is complex. On one hand, education can improve critical thinking and policy understanding. On the other, restricting voting based on education risks excluding marginalized communities and weakening democratic ideals. Ultimately, the debate forces us to ask a bigger question. What is the purpose of democracy? Is it to reward knowledge, or to ensure every voice counts equally, regardless of background? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between.